if you're going to say anything in public about someone who's going to give you a booster, it better be nice, because if they know what you're saying about them and you don't like them and you're just hoping you show up to the same place because you might get a different booster giver. Well, just my luck. I live in a small town. It was the same booster giver. She saw me. I saw her. I said, this is not going to end well, because she just doesn't have a good bedside manner to be a booster giver. So she, who does it all the time, maybe she's gotten better, but she hands over the syringe essentially to the pharmacist, because they're just farm techs at these places. She says, I'm not doing it. I'm imagining. And the pharmacist has, she says, you better do this. And I can tell they're discussing me because they're just looking at me. And it's not a mad rush for booster shots. So I'm sure she didn't do it for that reason. And the guy, the big guy, the actual pharmacist, because this is the way corporate pharmacies are. They got a pharmacist, and then they got the underlings who, hand out the prescriptions to the drive-through folks. So he had to do it, and I had to wait. And I think he was kind of resentful because he jabs me. First of all, he shows like he doesn't know how to do it. And he goes after my arm and just like he's, putting a thermometer in a steak or something. I mean, he's just plunging in with the needle. And it's like, I'm ready for a shock, but he says, hey, it's hard. And I said, yeah, it's muscle. I work out. He said, no, it's hard. You must not be relaxed. I must not be relaxed. I'm sitting. I'm not flexing. I said, yeah, it's hard because it's muscle. It's hard muscle. He says, no, it's like it's bone. Oh my God. My faith in Walgreens has dropped. Now, I know if I'm in California, I shouldn't have much faith in Walgreens because of the shenanigans that they try to pull on some kind of deal with the state, which there was a workaround. So any call of a boycott against Walgreens was kind of symbolic at best. So I ordinarily would have said, no, I'm not going to go to Walgreens. But I said, all right, if that was a symbolic protest and it doesn't really matter, I'm going to go. It's convenient. I'll give Walgreens a second chance. And then I go in and they jabbed me. And so I'm a little sore. If I sound a little sore, although how could you tell, right? How could you tell? Anyway, it's Emil, Amok's Takeout. My takes on all things considerable. Welcome to this program. This is a news talk program in the tradition of old style news talk from a guy who competed against Rush Limbaugh and obviously lost. A guy who did talk radio back in the day. And I guess that would make me an OG, as they say. I just go through the news and look at it and say, hey, this bothers me. And then I say to myself, I should have put that phone on Do Not Disturb. What is wrong with me? Okay. Oh, it's Walgreens. Sorry, Walgreens. Yeah, I mean it. I meant every word of it. You guys were butchers. A lot of people don't want to get vaccines and boosters, not because of the debate over the therapeutic effects of either. It's really because they fear shots. And so I guess they know if I'm Mr. Booster and Mr. Vaccine, first in line when the vaccine or the first booster is available, you had to have had there has to be at least 4 months between your last booster. But you can get them now if you're of a certain age, like I am. But watch for your public statements about the people who dispense them, because they have a means to attack you. I'm telling you, they went after me. I'm still sore. And normally I'm not that sore. There are ways to mitigate against the sore. And I don't mean taking Tylenol. I just mean they could have a better syringe side manner, but they didn't. Anyway, so we do this, the news of the day. Oh, the news of the day. I'll tell you about what I just saw that has bugged me, and it has to do with Zoe Zephyr. You may or may not have heard of Zoe Zephyr. She's a trans woman from Montana. And maybe you haven't heard of her because she's from Montana. But if you have been following the news and are, and look at all the silos, you got to look at, if you're liberal, you got to look at the liberal silos and the conservative ones. If you're conservative, hopefully we can get you to look at all the other ones. The not necessarily liberal, but more moderate silos. If you've been looking at all of them, you know that the transgender issue is a big issue among conservatives who want to shut down any social services for transgender people, and they want to essentially discriminate legally and oppress transgender people. And Montana's case in point, the Montana House, within the hour, this just happened. They voted to formally punish the transgender lawmaker, Representative Zoe Zephyr. She is in the Montana House of Representatives. The Republicans dominate that legislative body. They voted to formally punish Zephyr, who is transgender. She's been blocked from speaking since last week, and she told supporters of a bill to ban gender-affirming care for minors that when they bowed their heads to pray, she said she hoped that they would see blood on their hands. And she was talking about studies about transgender healthcare showing that they can reduce suicides among youth. Transgender healthcare. But the Montana House wants to ban gender affirming care for minors. So Zoe Zephyr spoke out. But before she spoke out, or she was not allowed to speak, because they were going to formally punish her for what? It sounds just like the Tennessee 3. Their issue was guns. Zoe Zephyr's, her issue is transgender health care. But they said that she was out of line, right? A matter of decorum for speaking during floor sessions about that bill and the way she did, especially by talking about seeing blood on their hands. And so they voted to reprimand her, but not before they allowed her to speak. And I'm going to play this clip because she was powerful. This is Zoe Zephyr.
Today, I rise in defense of those constituents, of my community, and of democracy itself. Last week, I spoke on the governor's amendments to Senate Bill 99, which banned gender-affirming care. This was a bill that was one of many targeting the LGBTQ community in Montana. You see what
she did? She rose in defense of those constituents, because when you shut down a legislature, you shut down all those people who voted for her. So she stood up in defense of the community and of democracy. And it's that bill, the Senate Bill 99, which would ban gender affirming care. So here's Zoe Zephyr, because she's speaking for her people. I mean, this is a show primarily for Asian Americans, the AAPI and the AAXs, but for anyone else, any other freedom-loving person. And if you've been kind of on the fence on trans issues, there should be no reason, after seeing what they did in the state of Montana to Zoe Zephyr. Here's more of Zoe Zephyr talking about the legislature there.
This legislature has systematically attacked that community. We have seen bills targeting our art forms, our books, our history, and our healthcare. And I rose up in defense of my community that day, speaking to harms that these bills bring and that I have firsthand experience knowing about. I have had friends who have taken their lives because of these bills. I have fielded calls from families in Montana, including one family whose trans teenager attempted to take her life while watching a hearing on one of the anti-trans bills. And in that hearing, our caucus pleaded with the Republican chair of the Judiciary Committee to not allow certain testimony, to keep decorum. And we were told a lot of people have a lot of opinions on these things. So when I rose up and said, there is blood on your hands, I was not being hyperbolic. I was speaking to the real consequences of the votes that we as legislators take in this body.
That's Zoe Zephyr. Very articulate, very passionate, and finally allowed to speak before the vote that would reprimand her. And this is not a spoiler alert, it's just the fact. They reprimanded her. But fortunately, they allowed her to speak first, and she let the Montana State House have it. And it's a good thing that there's someone like Zoe Zephyr who could stand up, describe what she did, why she's doing it, and stand up to the bigots in the Montana state legislature.
And when the speaker asks me to apologize, what he is, on behalf of decorum, what he is really asking me to do is be silent when my community is facing bills that get us killed. He's asking me to be complicit in this legislature's eradication of our community, and I refuse to do so, and I will always refuse to do so. I would also say that if you use decorum to silence people who hold you accountable, then in the name of all you are doing is using decorum as a tool of oppression.
And that got me. Using the idea of decorum, using decorum being used by the Republican Party in this day and age, where they just had a President 45, the twice impeached, soon to be twice indicted Donald Trump, that a man who had no idea of what the word decorum means, has no idea of what civility means. Suddenly, the Republicans have discovered decorum. Oh, when issues come up about gun control, when issues come about assault weapons ban, when issues come up about trans rights, transgender care. Now they want decorum. They're using it as a tool of repression to shut up those who disagree with them. This is fascism. Fascism in action. That's what it is. So we start today's show by, what can we do but tip our cap to Zoe Zephyr, Representative Zoe Zephyr, for standing up in Montana, speaking out to the House, which after she spoke, reprimanded her, said that you can vote remotely, you can't be on the floor, you can't speak to defend or to criticize the bill. You can't debate, but you can vote remotely. That's how they do it in Montana. Sounds like oppression to me. And keep in mind, this is, as I speak, it's Wednesday, but the protests have gone on in the State House, which led to today's, they gave Zoe Zephyr her time just to speak briefly before they reprimanded her. But there have been protests on Monday, on Tuesday. I don't know what's going to happen now, but you would think that this is not the end, that Zoe Zephyr will not be silenced by this, and nor will the trans people in Montana, nor will their allies anywhere else. But if you're wondering, how's it going in America? How's it going in our political discourse throughout this is a major roadblock. Just as the attempt to expel the Tennessee Three. They got two of them. They got the people of color. They let the white woman stay. But just like decorum was used to expel the Tennessee Three, they've used decorum now in Montana to muzzle a trans legislator in Montana. And this is one of the pet issues of the Republican Party right now, going after the trans people. It was one of Tucker Carlson's favorites right up to the end of his show, talking about, this was one of his issues. Everything, not just trans affirming healthcare, but all the other side issues like trans athletes, just trans people's right to exist, period. Do you know how fascistic that sounds? If you know any trans people, you cannot stand up, or you cannot not stand up to this kind of fascistic rhetoric. It's out there. And it's a threat to our democracy. No less than a threat to our democracy. So Zoe Zephyr, hats off to her. What gets me is that this is just the first of a couple of transgender items in the news today. This in Montana. In Missouri, I never lived in Montana. That's one of the few states I don't even think I drove by Montana. Too far north for me. Missouri, though, I lived in, and Missouri has a law that if it goes into effect, will ban transgender health care for not just minors, but for adults. Right now, Planned Parenthood is trying to see all the patients they can before the deadline occurs at midnight. A lawsuit is being heard to try to stop the midnight deadline for when a new anti-trans law takes effect. But most people, from reports I have seen, are preparing for the fact that that new law stands, and they're going to have to fight other legal battles to try to reverse that. So Missouri becomes the first state to ban gender affirming healthcare, not just for minors, but for adults as well. This is where America is going, and it's not good for our democracy. Not good at all. Missouri at midnight, Montana just within the hour, shutting down Representative Zoe Zephyr, state representative. You heard her talk. I mean, when she said this one line, she says, and she's protesting a bill that would end transgender health care. She says,
when my community is facing bills that get us killed, he's asking me to be complicit in this legislature's eradication of our community, and I refuse to do so, and I will always refuse to do so. I would also say that if you use decorum to silence people who hold you accountable, then in the name of all you are doing is using decorum as a tool of oppression.
Using decorum as a tool of oppression. Boy, That just hits you. If you're for democracy, it just hits you. And if you've been kind of silent or saying, hey, not my issue to date, you should start paying attention. The stuff they're doing is real and is affecting people's lives. And in the words of Zoe Zephyr, Montana, by moving forward and trying to vote to ban transgender health care for minors, will have blood on their hands. Will have blood on their hands. So that's the big story that just sort of got me. You know, sometimes you say, well, what are you going to talk about today, Emil? Well, let's see what's in the news. I can talk about the news, and I'll tell you about something that really bugs me, or I'm going to give you some kind of observation. Is it funny that Joe Biden and the South Korean president, where they were meeting there today in the White House, they had a big to-do, and they had marching bands dressed up in colonial gear. It was a real big thing. And man, for South Koreans, this is a big deal because this may seem like some kind of phony dog and pony show. But this is the kind of dog and pony stuff that matters, where people from around the world look at it and say, South Korea, United States, getting along, having a good time, talking business, talking about maybe more, being somewhat conciliatory when, you know, the news broke about how maybe America was spying on South Korea. That question came up in a news conference today. But look, they're getting together. They're friendly. This is the important part of diplomacy. You know, don't always look for the hard and heavy headline of something substantial. It's usually when nothing happens that everything happens. When the message is made clear to those around the world who want to say, well, what's happening with South Korea and the United States? Well, you can bet the Chinese were watching. You can bet the North Koreans were. You can bet all of Asia was watching how Biden treated the South Koreans. You know that. And then, you know, it's just coincidence, but it's almost like South Koreans in America, or Korean immigrants, or the Korean community is exploding right now. Maybe it's just my sense of it because of the media, because of beef, which Stephen Yoon, oh my God, he and Ali Wong are fabulous in beef. I was just going to watch maybe half of one episode, you know, give it the 10-minute test or the 5-minute test. Then I get, let's give it 15. Oh, let's give it 20. Oh God, that's the first. Let's give it a second episode. 10 episodes later, and beef, I've got to say, is probably the classic Asian American immigrant story of our modern times. Modern times. And I say this because there are so many immigrant stories. But in modern times, oh my God, this one had, especially the Korean church. If you don't know how powerful the Korean church is in the community, and praise bands. I mean, there's a whole thing about Korean church and praise bands, and there's good and evil and rage. Beef, I'm telling you. And it's South Korea. Now, I was looking at some trade magazines, and it said that Netflix is preparing to do more between South Koreans, like something like $2 billion in kind of development deals. I mean, this is, of course, you know, it's because of Squid Game. It's because of Parasite, which won an Oscar. Squid Game, which was broke records. But man, this is a good time to be Korean American. And just as I say that, coincidentally, just this week, I'm talking about Chul Soo Lee, who, I'm of a certain age. I should know Chul Soo Lee's story. But, I was just a young kid. I was just a young Amok guy. I was not politicized in college to the degree that I am now. Because you have to experience that kind of, you have to get that experience shown to you. And I didn't quite understand what was happening to me between, say, ages of 1 to 21. It wasn't until I was really in my late 20s that I understood that I was not as aware of who I was as an Asian American as I should be. And I wasn't as in tune with my father's story. And so when Chul Soo Lee happened, like in the late 70s, it wasn't a big deal. But you see Free Chul Soo Lee, the documentary that's on PBS. It was released this week. Independent Lens. Check it out. Google it. PBS. Chul Soo Lee. And it tells the story of an immigrant kid who comes after the Korean War. And because he doesn't speak English, because he doesn't have a decent education, the public school officials put him in the criminal justice world. Juvie, juvenile hall, mental health. Those were the boxes they put him in, and he was trapped. And his life really was preordained with that decision that this guy, we're not going to help this guy. Not in America. Korean American story. Free Chul Soo Lee. So anyway, I saw that documentary this week. You got the news about Netflix investing billions in South Korean Korean products or projects. And you know that it's not just South Korean. It's going to spill over. There's going to be, beef was, South Korean immigrants here in America. There's going to be, but mostly in English. There's going to be a spillover. It's a great time to be South Korean Asian American actor. Great time to be BTS. Great time. I just think, and I think there will be spillover for others, but primarily, man, the Koreans, this is the Koreans' time. So Joe Biden was at his press conference with the Korean president, and a question came up about his age. And I'm writing about it right now. But what is Joe Biden going to say? He says, watch me. Can I do the job? Watch me. And all he's really trying to say is, compare me to all the others and see what I can do and see what they can do. And when I say all the others, I mean the twice impeached, soon to be twice indicted former president of the United States, number 45, Donald Trump. He's no spring chicken. Compare his cholesterol level with Biden's. I would say, Trump, based on the health reports that were issued while he was president, was near obese, not in the picture of health. You want to talk about age? Well, just look at Trump's health records. You want that kind of guy to be? I say that because I'm presuming he's going to be the nominee for the Republicans. Everyone else is just sort of playing for the second position. But Biden was pretty strong today when he answered that question. He said, look, I'm not saying I'm the only guy who can beat Trump, but I'm the only one here with the experience. I mean, it's true. I mean, where are all the young Democrats? I mean, if people are so upset, don't want Biden to run, well, let's see some people show up. I will say this, of the also rans or also running, there's Bobby Kennedy Jr. I mean, he's got the name. He doesn't have the vaccinations, though. I want to like Bobby Kennedy Jr. I like his dad. Everyone loved his dad. But Bobby Kennedy Jr. is his own guy, and he's a little slightly off on some things. I mean, if he said something, or if I saw him, if I watched more deeply, maybe he would say something to convince me to vote for him. But I haven't heard that. Marianne Williamson, on the other hand, I mean, if you want to talk how America is teetering on theocracy, well, why does that theocracy have to be determined by right-wing Christians? I mean, why not more non-sectarian spiritual types like Marianne Williamson, who believes in a multitude of spiritual beliefs that is really pretty much non-denominational. You could be, I mean, she practices A Course in Miracles, which was written by two Jews based on Christianity with a little Buddhism thrown in. I mean, it's all encompassing spiritual practice. And by that I mean, she just talks about the two roads, the world of love and the world of fear. The world of fear is driven by ego. The world of love is compassionate, thinks of other people. It should be the way politics is run. I mean, imagine if we had some people who thought that way, who actually believed in their Christian values, say on something like this debt ceiling nonsense that they're trying to get passed, that even if it passes the House, it's not going to get passed in the Senate. That's because they can't agree on how to pay our bills, or how to act while still being responsible. So of course, the Republicans want to cut all these helpful provisions in Medicaid, which will affect millions of people in the United States, millions of people without means who need the help. That's not very Christian. But that's one of the compromises that Kevin McCarthy, the Republican, gave into from his more right-wing folks. And like I said, the right has a problem with helping people. They want to protect the rich and the wealthy. This is a generalization maybe, but it's true. And the left, the moderates, the Democrats, they want to help the middle class, such that it is in modern America of 1% and 99%. Middle class? Wow. Middle class is people who make $300,000 a year. I mean, because we're talking about the 1%, a world of 1%. And then, speaking of 1%, the Clippers lost, and an actual member of the 1% that I've actually talked to, Steve Ballmer, they showed a picture of him on the sidelines. He didn't look too happy. He had all his multimillionaire basketball players that he pays. They were hurt. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George couldn't play last night. It was the game was closer than it should have been, but they were in it until the third quarter, the LA Clippers, but they ended up losing. It's sad because they could have won and advanced, maybe. But I remember talking to Steve Ballmer in the summer saying, hey, you got a shot? You got a shot for the playoffs? So I talked to him summer of 2022, and he said, I like my chances, he said. I like my because he thought he'd have a healthy Paul George and a healthy Kawhi Leonard. He had neither, and he's out. Poor 1% Steve Ballmer. But you can bet one thing. He probably does not regret leaving Microsoft. And he probably doesn't regret being like a few notches down from Bill Gates in terms of the money list. But he probably would have wanted to advance in the NBA Finals. NBA Finals. Okay, I have a comment about the Warriors. You know, I'm a Warrior fan. And that's right, because I talked to Ballmer when the Warriors were in Boston kicking the Celtics' butts and winning the championship. And I just talked about the future and asked him, how do you like the future of the Clippers? And he said he did. He was wrong. Now, I like the future of the Warriors because I think they'll win Game 6. Game 6 will be played in San Francisco. I think they'll win that. So the question is, do they win Game 5 tonight in Sacramento? They're terrible on the road. They have lost the first two, games 1 and 2 on the road. They won games 3 and 4 at home. If they're going to win a road game, this is the game they're going to win, I think. De'Aaron Fox has hurt his hand. He says he's going to play. The earlier report was that he broke some bone on his hand, a fracture, but he says he's going to play. All right, it's going to affect his play somehow. I mean, it's not going to be a minor nuisance. It's going to be, if it's going to have an impact, it's going to have the impact on this game, Game 5. So the Warriors automatically have an advantage. I think they get enough out of their players to win Game 5. And then they go back home, they win Game 6, they win it all. If they lose tonight, now who knows if De'Aaron Fox gets better or worse, but they got him on the ropes now for Game 5. The Warriors should win. But if the Warriors lose, they're down 3 games to 2, and it makes Game 6 a must-win at home, which they will, and that make Game 7 a must-win, which I don't know if they will, because the Kings are tough. So it all depends on which game you think the Kings are going to have a slight edge, a Game 5 or a Game 7. I think they have a slight edge on Game 7 because they're at home. They get a chance to knock off the Dubs. I would fear Game 7 if I was a Warrior fan. Game 5, I think the Warriors have momentum. And they have De'Aaron Fox's bad hand. And they got to win one on the road. This could be it. This is the game they win on the road. You know, for the last few years, the Kings, the Sacramento Kings used to be the team that the Warriors would always beat. But in Sacramento, they always gave the Warriors problems. So I don't know. It's going to be hard to win 2 games. But I think they have a better chance of winning Game 5 in Sacramento and then winning Game 6 at home. So good luck, Warriors, tonight. And now we come to the story that some people say, what is this about Trump and rape? And is it a defamation case or is it a rape case? It is a defamation case. You know that, right? I mean, it doesn't sound like a defamation case because you say, well, what is this? Yeah, it's a defamation case. E. Jean Carroll is a writer in New York. And she claims this is a civil defamation trial. And it's what Trump said about E. Jean Carroll. And essentially, the rape is important because E. Jean Carroll says, I'm here. She said today, I'm here because Donald Trump raped me. And I mean, I'm trying to find her exact quote, but what she says is when she says that, you know, Donald Trump denied it and essentially said defaming things about E. Jean Carroll, who then claims that she suffered defamation, she suffered her ability to make a living as a writer, as a journalist. But most of all, she said in court, according to reports, she suffered the ability to be in romantic relationships. That's what Donald Trump did to her when he did what she claims he did, which is rape her. And Donald Trump then comes back and says, no, I didn't rape you. Denies it. And then in doing so also ends up defaming her. That's what this case is about. So if you are following the case, E. Jean Carroll took the stand today. And the exact quote is, she said, I'm here because Donald Trump raped me. I mean, that pretty blunt, huh? And then you're wondering, well, shouldn't this be a rape case then? Well, I think it's statute of limitations, but she chose to make this a civil defamation case, not a criminal case. So just know what pool you're in and keep that in mind, and don't get it mixed up with the idea that, oh, this is the rape case. Well, defamation case, and rape is a central part of it. But if you disprove the rape ever happened, is it still defamation? Is the rape, the rape would be correct, because if you're a jury and you believe the rape occurred and you believe that Donald Trump was defaming you by talking about it in public, or you could say, well, maybe the rape didn't occur. I mean, this is Trump's position. Trump's a winner, huh? He went on Truth Social before E. Jean Carroll took the stand today. In 2 posts, he said the case was a witch hunt, you know, and he said, quote, the E. Jean Carroll case, Ms. Bergdorf Goodman, is a made-up scam, Trump wrote. Her lawyer is a political operative financed by a big political donor that they said didn't exist, only to get caught lying about that. Don't know about that, but this is what Trump says. Just look at her CNN interview before and after the commercial break. Like a different person. She said there was a dress using the old Monica Lewinsky stuff. Then she didn't want to produce it. The dress should be allowed to be part of the case. This is a fraudulent and false story witch hunt. That was Donald Trump's post in Truth Social. In the second post, Trump went on to claim that Ms. Carroll and her attorneys got caught lying. The Ms. Bergdorf Goodman case is financed by a big political donor, Trump said. Quote, does anybody believe that I would take a then almost 60-year-old woman that I didn't know from the front door of a very crowded department store, with me being very well known, to put it mildly, this is Trump's words, into a tiny dressing room, and he wrote, she didn't scream. There are no witnesses. Nobody saw this. She never made a police complaint. If I was seen there with a big press, with a woman, big press, scam. If I was seen there with a woman, in caps, big press, scam. And that's Trump speaking out before E. Jean Carroll was able to testify today. You know, if I were Trump's lawyers, I would say, oh my God, please shut up, Mr. Trump, because something happened. It's not some made up thing, not when Trump has this kind of vitriol. Something happened, and whatever happened probably is closer to rape than not. But then when Trump says in his post today, she didn't scream, well, someone should tell Donald that in most cases of rape, the victims are so full of shame they don't scream. Victims are so full of rage and so upset, shame, rage and shame at the same time. One suppresses the other. They ball up and say nothing. Some don't even report. And then that makes it even doubly hurtful when they do report and the law does nothing. So I have to say, I have read over the reports. She's got a new book. That doesn't mean that this is why she's trying to make this claim. But she filed the defamation lawsuit not about the rape, but because she alleges that Trump damaged her reputation, harmed her professionally, and caused emotional pain. So we're going to have to see how this plays out. But I don't think Donald Trump helped himself, because they're reporting right now, and they're talking about this on cable. Breathless reporters are coming out talking about the testimony of E. Jean Carroll, talking about how he lied and shattered my reputation, and I'm here to try to get my life back. That's what E. Jean Carroll said. She also described that day in 1996 in the spring in Bergdorf Goodman department store she runs into Donald Trump. He was leaving, or she was leaving. He was walking in, and he says to her in a very, the Donald Trump charming way, hey, you're that advice lady on TV. And she says, hey, you're the real estate tycoon. And they began to joke and be flirty. And then he asked her for advice to buy a gift. They looked at some handbags and then some hats. He suggested, according to E. Jean Carroll, that they go up to the 6th floor of the room where they sell lingerie. And there they continued joking around. And she described a gray-blue bodysuit that they joked about. He suggested that she put it on. She joked that he should put it on. They went into the dressing room, and that's where things get graphic. E. Jean Carroll, claims that Trump pushed her up against the wall, pushed her so hard her head banged twice. Then he pulled on her tights and raped her. And at one point, Carroll's voice cracked, according to reports. And she said she felt pain that she could still feel at this moment, this day, on the witness stand. And she now regrets having done any of this, thinking how stupid it was to go up to that dressing room. on the 6th floor of Bergdorf Goodman. And she said that the damage that this whole thing caused her left her unable to have a romantic life again. Now, you put all that together, you have a woman, I don't think she was 60 at the time. I don't know if Trump is right about his assertion about her age. But you take this under oath, this testimony under oath, and you're a member of the jury or you're a judge, and you hear this, I'd say she's pretty convincing. The bodysuit was a lace bodysuit, according to some reports. Carol alleges that Trump shoved her against the wall, put his hands underneath her dress, pulled down her tights, then unzipped his pants and forcing his fingers around my private area, she says, thrust his penis halfway or completely, I'm not certain, inside me. It's a quote. Forced his fingers around my private area, thrust his penis halfway or completely, I'm not certain, inside me. She calls it a colossal struggle that ensued. She eventually pushed him away, ran out of the dressing room. She says in her writing, the episode was over in under 3 minutes. And Trump denied it, said she's just trying to sell a book. And then said, I'll say it with great respect. Number one, she's not my type. Number two, it never happened. It never happened, okay? That's what Trump said. So this will play out. And you just have to think that maybe, just maybe, is it crossing your mind that this is not the man who should be the Republican nominee? I mean, really, if I were a Republican, I'm not, but if I were, I mean, I'm free to vote Republican. I would want a better candidate. And right now, you've got the big buffoon and you have little buffoons. I mean, there's Asa Hutchinson who got in the race today. He's at 0%. You have Asian Americans. I got to give a plug to the Asian Americans, even though I don't know how much of a plug they deserve. Nikki Haley. And there's Vivek Ramaswamy. Not to be confused with Vivek Ranadive. Vivek Ranadive is the Kings owner, Sacramento Kings owner. Vivek Ramaswamy is the Harvard College, Harvard Law trained entrepreneur who thinks he knows everything. And he thinks he's responsible for everything. He thinks he got Tucker Carlson fired. Do you think he got Don Lemon fired? Do you think he's... So anyway, I think what we're seeing with the Asian American Indians is we're seeing their rise in politics. And I'll say one thing. Here's what you can attribute it to. It's not just community affinity. It's also access to money. Ramaswamy, tech millionaire. I know Nikki Haley isn't, but she's on the Republican side, and she was governor. She carried water for Trump once. I mean, the way you look at the South Asians in the race, you might say, oh, they're just in it for the second place spot. They want to be Trump's Veep. But I don't know if they could be big enough figlies for things like all the stories that'll be breaking during the campaign. And the big ones, like the indictment cases, New York, the one coming up in Georgia, the one maybe coming up in Florida, maybe a fourth one over January 6th. I mean, it should be a reminder, right, about There are people who run for president, guys who get caught up in rape charges, guys who get caught up in criminal indictments. They shouldn't be president. Meanwhile, while Donald Trump's on Truth Social trying to bring back his reputation by trying to debunk the claims of a woman who claims rape, Joe Biden is in the White House being presidential, speaking with the president of South Korea, and making sure the world is a safer place. I mean, bad day for Trump, good day for Biden, huh? And I hope tonight a better day for the Golden State Warriors. God, if you're a basketball fan, usually it doesn't get this good for basketball fans until like maybe the semifinals or the finals. We're just in round one. And then that's going to come on and you're going to see, in the next round, more intense battles. And then you're going to get to the Western Division finals. And then you're going to get to the finals. This is going to be a great thing. And maybe the best teams are in the West. So you got to be happy that Miami's playing well because they got an Asian American, Filipino American coach, Eric Spoelstra. But they look good. They look competitive with Jimmy Butler, Miami. And then there's so many teams that can come out of the West. From the Phoenix Suns, Denver Nuggets, the Sacramento Kings, the Golden State Warriors. Oh my God. There you have it. Whoever wins the West probably will win it all. Let's see. Let's hope. All right. If you missed any or all or part of the show, go back to the beginning. Check out what I said about Zoe Zephyr, the Montana House member who was censored. But before she went, made some frank, courageous comments about the Montana House's use of decorum to oppress the free speech rights of trans people in America. And as I said, if you are a member of a minority group in the United States, you cannot hear her words and not have the political empathy to stand with Zoe Zephyr and all those who are standing against anti-trans laws that are now suddenly coming on the books. They're trying to pass one in Montana. They got one in Missouri passed that goes into effect as of midnight. This is a civil rights battle, my friends. So go back and listen to what Zoe Zephyr said, and then go back and catch the replay on Twitter at Emil Amok, YouTube at youtube.com/EMILAMOK1. Let's see, where else am I? Facebook at fb.com/EmilGuillermo.media. Also, replays on AMOK.com. I like to meditate. I don't always get to meditate, but here's the thing. It's just about being in this deep-seated awareness of the present, of the now, and really not just leaning in, but really leaning back and letting the process in front of you play out and being present with that. If you are present with that, you are you'll probably be the best you could be because you are present, you are aware. You are right there. That's a kind of meditative awareness that one tries to I mean, it's you fall in and out of this, but you got to like stay. The intention to stay in that process, be in that deep-seated awareness. And when it happens, you let things play out in front of you. And you respond accordingly. And you let the past go and you just deal with the things in front of you. It's sort of like driving. Once you've run that red light, you don't go back and say, make over. No, you just keep going forward. All right, that was then. This is now. Driving forward. Now, I'm not saying you rationalize against doing something bad like driving against a red light, but I only say it to indicate pay attention to what's in front of you. It could be a motorcycle cop waving a ticket. Deal with that. Or if it's not, deal with what's in front of you. And don't forget to end it with a dash of loving self-kindness. And always loving self-kindness. Always the metta, M-E-T-T-A, the metta, self-love, compassion. That meditation. Show love to others, it will come back. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Check out the PETA podcast. It's on saving animals in Turkey, the country. The worst earthquake in February, 7.8, the worst. Like the worst earthquake in that country since 523. Can you imagine that? Man. Anyway, I talk about saving animals there. Check it out. The PETA podcast, wherever you podcast. This is our live thing, our secret podcast. You know where to get it. Replays on amok.com. Till next time, Emil Guillermo. Mahal